All right, you ready to roll?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we have a very football-centric episode for you. Entirely NFL football today. This is the Post-Preseason preseason preview. That's what we're calling it.
Now to clarify, it's post-preseason because it's after preseason,
right?
But it's preseason because it's before the regular season.
It sounds a lot better written out. So it's like post-preseason, pre-season preview. It makes sense, right?
Love it.
Anyways,
Love it.
So this is like I said, we're only talking football today. We're taking a break from baseball, giving football our full attention. So we'll start off with a Thursday question like we have been, and then we'll jump right into the Vikings-Falcons preview. Next up on the docket, I actually wrote down a schedule for the first time in a very long time for this episode. We'll do an NFL season breakdown. Drew and I have put together who our picks are to win the division, each division, wild card picks, and so forth. So we'll go through that. Then we are going to do our Week 1 picks, which we did during the About the Labor podcast. So if you're a fan of that, we'll basically be replicating exactly what we did on that segment. And then we got a new one here. It's called Lock of the Week. It's going to be a gambling segment for those of you degenerates out there. Basically exactly what you think it is. We're going to give one pick apiece, and we're going to call it our lock. Then we're going to finish up with some final thoughts, and that is going to wrap up the show for today. So that's the game plan. Let me knock out this advertising real quick, and then we'll jump right into some Vikings-Falcons football here. Back to SOCOM Creative. Are you ready to call an audible for your advertising? It is 2019. If you're not advertising your business on Facebook or Instagram, you are losing. Period. End of story. Winning Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns are well targeted. It's hard to sell lawn care to people who don't own lawns. Scroll stopping, kind of like stopping the run early in the game. If you want to get your customers' attention on Facebook and Instagram, you got to find a way to stop the scroll. Lastly, they make money. Winning campaigns aren't just about likes and shares. It's all about the dollars put in your pocket. If you're ready to kick ass with your social media ads, check out our friends down at SOCOM Creative. All they do is come up with ways to help you explode your business and bring in new customers. Probably should request an updated ad at some point here because I'm getting to the point where I basically memorized that. So
there you go.
Anyways, let's get into some football. It's been 2 years since we've done a pregame breakdown. Vikings obviously play the Falcons on Sunday. I'm sure all of you are aware of that. That's why you're listening to the show. Very exciting stuff. Football is back. But the Vikings are starting off with a pretty tough matchup here. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons are kind of, you know what, I kind of see a lot of similarities between the Vikings and Falcons in terms of roster composition, where you've got a ton of talent that simply didn't live up to expectations last year. Both of these teams were candidates to, make a run in the NFC. Didn't turn out that way, and now they're kind of starting over from scratch this year. So let's start off with the offense for the Falcons, as we've done in the past. Basically, we'll break down what you're looking at here, who are the key playmakers, and how the Vikings are going to try and stop them. So we have to start with quarterback Matt Ryan. He's a veteran in the league. You guys are all well aware of who he is. So tell me a little bit about Matt Ryan, what you think about him, and what he's going to do to the Vikings defense this weekend.
I feel like I'm just thinking back to Matt Ryan against the Vikings in previous years, and it seems like I don't remember him playing that well. 2015 they played in Atlanta. Vikings held them to 13 points. 2017 they played in Atlanta. I think they only scored 9 points in that game. Matt Ryan doesn't scare me nearly as much as his career, success statistics should maybe. The one thing that does scare me really about this matchup in terms of the Vikings defense versus Falcons offense is Julio and Xavier Rhodes, because Xavier didn't quite maintain his elite status, so to speak, in 2018. And I'm not sure I'm a believer in him in this matchup going into Week 1, 2019. against Julio, though he has been relatively solid against Julio in the past. I just don't know if that'll maintain itself this week.
Sure. Yeah, the Xavier Rhodes Julio Jones matchup it dates back a while now. I was just I did one of my fantasy drafts yesterday, and I took Julio Jones in the first round, and I was reading one of like the little tidbits on Julio Jones. Julio Jones is 30 years old, which I don't like. Relatively speaking, I'm not an old person, but that certainly makes me feel old because I remember watching Julio Jones when he was at Alabama. He's still, as big of a threat as ever. People bust his chops a little bit for not scoring as many touchdowns as he probably should, I guess.
It was really funny last year how he didn't score one until like week 11 or whatever it was.
Yeah, and then he went ahead and just scored like 8 of them real quick.
Yeah.
So, Julio Jones is obviously the biggest threat, but he's not the player that he is today without Matt Ryan. The thing about Matt Ryan is that if the Patriots don't make that comeback in the Super Bowl, we probably view him a lot differently as a quarterback. Yeah. This is a guy who has been an All-Pro at the quarterback position, which, to put it in perspective, Drew Brees has only been I believe Drew Brees has only been an All-Pro once or twice. He's been a one-time All-Pro. So if you think about it, if you put it in that kind of if you think about it like that, this is a guy that has been considered the top at the very pinnacle of his position in the past, and he has had a very, very solid career. Think about the fact that when he came into the league in 2008, he was replacing Michael Vick, and he had all the weight on his shoulders. And he's been nothing but consistent since he's been with the Falcons. He has literally, this is crazy, he has literally missed 2 starts since he was the number 3 overall pick in 2008. 2 starts.
Wow. That's it? Wait.
Yeah.
I guess I couldn't tell you who any of the Falcons' backup quarterbacks have been in the last 10 years because they haven't played. Yeah, Matt Schaub. Well, and Matt Schaub now, too. Mm-hmm. But that's it.
So he's been he's been incredibly consistent throughout his career. He's won, 10 games, I believe it's 6 times throughout the time that he's been with the Falcons. He was a crazy Brady comeback away from winning a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. He's as talented as ever, and even at 33 years old, being a pocket passer, I mean, he's not. I don't see any potential drop off. This is a position where he finally has all the pieces again. You look back at the early Matt Ryan Falcons teams when he had Tony Gonzalez and Roddy White was there, Julio Jones was just getting onto the scene. And now he's got all the pieces once again. You've got Julio Jones who, like you said, is going to be facing up with Xavier Rhodes, and that's obviously going to be the top matchup. But there's also plenty of overlooked pieces on offense as well. You've got Calvin Ridley, who came out of Alabama as one of the most efficient route runners in his draft class and immediately made an impact last year. He was a touchdown machine, so especially in the red zone. He's going to probably see a lot of Trey Waynes specifically, and he's going to probably see a lot of heads-up coverage with Trey Waynes too, because you're going to have that safety help over the top on Julio Jones to contain him, despite the fact that, for what it's worth, Xavier Rhodes has been pretty good at containing Julio Jones. So this is going to be an offense that, naturally runs through the quarterback. They're going to try to establish the run early, but there's so many weapons on that offense, like in terms of passing the football, that as long as they can, if they have an offense set where the play caller basically isn't Steve Sarkisian, they have been very successful moving the football and scoring points at a high rate.
Right, yeah. A question for you now is Jones, Ridley, Sanu, the best wide receiver trio in the NFL?
Oh, it definitely has. I mean, it definitely has to be up there. You think about the top duos in the league, and most of those top duos don't have a third piece.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I mean, Jones and Ridley have been discussed as a top duo.
Right.
But I feel like Sanu is absolutely probably the best third guy of any team. That'd be my vote, would be Jones, Ridley, Sanu.
They're definitely right up there. I mean, Sanu is a guy who's being paid like a number 2 receiver. Obviously, you draft Calvin Ridley, he kind of gets bumped back, and the targets drop off a little bit. But this is a guy that was basically second fiddle to AJ Green in Cincinnati. Comes over to Atlanta as kind of a piece to just ease the pressure off of Julio Jones, and he's really done just that. Like, he has done his job. He hasn't necessarily fulfilled his contract, I suppose, given that he's being paid basically a lot of money to be a glorified number 3 receiver. Given the fact that Calvin Ridley is expected to see an increase in targets this year, and was obviously a huge piece to any success that Atlanta did have last year. So, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a better trio in the NFL right now. Off the top of my head, you think of the top wide receiver cores in the NFL, and every single one of them that I think of off the top of my head, Cleveland drops off significantly after Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. Obviously, in Minnesota, we know very well that after Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, that falls to pieces as well. You can extend this out to the Chargers. I know that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are really excited about the fact that they're considered a top duo in the NFL, but where's the third piece? Atlanta definitely has the ability to spread you out with 3 receivers more than, at the very least, more than 9 out of 10
It's got to be
NFL.
It's got to be Atlanta or the Rams, right? Cooks, Woods, Kupp,
right,
and then Julio, Ridley, Sanu. But basically, point being, Vikings secondary has its hands full. If I remember from last year, they all moved around. Julio would play in the slot, Ridley would play in the slot, Sanu will play in the slot. Right. There's not one guy that's designated to that role, or designated to the outside for that matter. They're going to throw all kinds of different looks, and I do wonder how much Rhodes will travel inside. He's done it in the past before when he shadowed number 1 receivers. Right. I don't know if that'll continue this year or not, but either way, I'm not terribly confident about that matchup, even though he's had success in the past against Julio.
For sure. And you look at, as an extension off of those 3 receivers that we've already mentioned, you also got Austin Hooper, who, I personally am probably not as high as a lot of people are. I think he's a very solid piece. He's not gonna take the top off the defense or catch 10 passes in a game or be a definitive difference maker like some of these other big name tight ends in the NFL. But he's a nice piece, and he sets up kind of a bit of a matchup issue for the Vikings, because if you think about this, I guess from a straight up perspective, we're likely to see Xavier Rhodes on Julio Jones most of the time. Trey Waynes will be on the outside with Calvin Ridley. That leaves Mackenzie Alexander to follow Mohamed Sanu in the slot, assuming that that's the lineup, the standard base lineup that they're going to trot out there in 3 receiver sets. Who covers the tight end at that point? You basically are going to have to put, in theory, you put either Anthony Barr or Harrison Smith, in single coverage against a guy that has the physical frame to, match up with Anthony Barr, and also has the athleticism to run with Harrison Smith, who I've mentioned this before in the past. If there is one thing that Harrison Smith isn't great at, it is man coverage. So that is a potential wrench that the Vikings could face this week. The other obvious one is the depth at cornerback. Beyond those 3 guys that I mentioned, who's next? I
don't think Hughes is going to play, right? Hughes is limited Wednesday. That's all we know at this point.
Zimmer said he's very close. So in my eyes, that means that he's not playing this week. Or if he does play, he's not playing much.
A lot.
So
does that mean Kearse would be the next man up in the slot? That'd be scary. Maybe he's a guy that can cover Hooper.
It's a difficult position because the guy that you brought in to be your backup slot corner has absolutely no experience with the team to date in Mark Fields. So you're looking at, and we know that Xavier Rhodes is going to come up lame and miss 5 snaps at some point.
Yeah, you're right.
So that puts a ton of pressure on I mean, you look at the depth chart right now. It might be Chris Boyd out there that has to go one-on-one with either Calvin Ridley or Mohamed Sanu. And that's a situation that I simply don't like. And I don't think it's hard to see that, when you're dealing with a rookie cornerback that has zero NFL experience to date, you're probably putting him in a bad position, matching up with very sound technical route runners that have, of course, experience in the NFL. I think that's very dangerous. You gotta. I think the Vikings have to be very concerned with the fact that if any of their top three cornerbacks have to miss snaps, they could be looking at a definitive mismatch out there that Matt Ryan is definitely smart enough to take advantage of.
Now, I will say that, I'm very excited about watching Danielle Hunter versus whoever it is that the Falcons end up starting at right tackle. As far as I know, if you look on their depth chart, and I think I saw something on Twitter today about this too, that they don't even have a starter there right now, or at least they didn't as of, I think, yesterday or last night, Tuesday night. Now that might have changed since then when I was at work today. I don't know. But point being, they are reeling at right tackle. And I think also at left guard, they're kind of shaky and don't really have a definitive answer, which tells me that this guy isn't a stud, isn't great. Whoever it is, either Matt Gono or Caleb McGarry, it looks like the two options at right tackle.
You also got Tyson Bryo out there. I don't know if he's healthy. He seems like he's always hurt. The position that Atlanta is in, honestly, they're in a very similar position to the Vikings, where they've got all the assets, in terms of playmakers. The offensive line is questionable. They drafted a guy in the first round too, in Chris Lindstrom, and he's going to slot in there, and he's going to be playing his first snaps at the guard position. The two pieces that they have that the Vikings don't, they have a very solid left tackle in Jake Matthews, who has been doing this for a long time. And as far as offensive tackles go, if you've been watching the NFL over the last 3 or 4 years, you know that offensive tackle as a whole is not a great position group in the NFL. I personally would say that Jake Matthews tends to be, in the upper echelons of what is there's a pretty big difference between like a bottom 10 starting left tackle or starting tackle and a top 10 starting tackle. Like there's a big ability difference there. I think the Vikings probably have a bottom 10 one right now, for sure,
probably on both ends of the line, and Falcons have at least one in Matthews that's in the top 10, I would say.
Which puts that much more pressure on Danielle Hunter to take advantage of his individual matchup. You think about the way that pass rushing can affect
or Odenigbo or Weatherly or Griffin. I guess they're probably going to rotate in guys as well there between Weatherly and Odenigbo. So it might not be just Hunter. Point being, I think that right side is going to be that's going to be the side where the Vikings
there.
Take
that's
advantage.
The moneymaker. I certainly agree. I mean, there are very few flaws on this offense. We haven't even mentioned Devontae Freeman yet. Their veteran running back who has been, very successful both as a rusher and a pass catcher throughout his career. He's one of the more steady running backs that nobody seems to talk about just because he's not very flashy, but he has a nose for the end zone. He can catch the ball well out of the backfield, and he picks up blitzes as well. He's an excellent piece to add to what is basically became a very vertical offense for the Falcons. So, as a whole, this is one of the deeper offensive units that you're going to find and across the NFL, and certainly one of the better offensive teams the Vikings are going to play. It's rather unfortunate that they have to play in Week 1, or potentially maybe that's a good thing, just because they haven't. Maybe they're a little rusty or whatever it is, but
could turn out to be similar to the Saints in 2017, where you play a high octane offense at home, and they, for whatever reason, the Saints weren't up to par with the rest of the season that they played that year. Their offense wasn't quite in the same rhythm, and Vikings took advantage of that and held them, I think, to 19 in that game, but basically 4 field goals before a garbage time touchdown. And the Vikings have done a great job of holding the Falcons to field goals in the past. And in the Matt Ryan era, and well, in the Zimmer era as well, 2014, 2015, 2017, off the top of my head, were games where the Falcons didn't score a ton of points. So maybe that's what it takes now.
Absolutely. So we'll go over. Let's hop over to the defensive side for the ball for Atlanta here. I think that essentially wraps up what they're looking like on offense. On the defensive side of the ball, this is a defense, in my opinion, that the Vikings can take advantage of.
There are like 3 studs to me. And then after that, it's like
if that really,
yeah, and then really, like, especially the secondary is vulnerable. They were not great last year. Gave up a ton of big yardage games, big plays, all over the place, and I think they're still susceptible to it, especially in like Kirk is the type of guy that should take apart this team, where he's not. And I'm going to say this about Kirk now, but it's not a big pressure game. It's just the first game of the season.
Right.
No playoff implications on the line against a defense that is, poor, and at least in the secondary, and he's got all the weapons to do it. And these guys are very, very vulnerable, like you said.
Absolutely. Starting with their defensive line, which really is probably their strength, and that's honestly that's basically all on Grady Jarrett, who has become one of the better run stoppers and also pass rushers from that 3-tech spot. Yeah, he's extremely dangerous, and as a Vikings fan, you're certainly well aware of the fact that the Vikings interior is not. It's certainly not battle tested, and there's definitely good reason to be skeptical of how they produce this year.
This is a good first test for sure to kind of see where they're at.
This is trial by fire for sure. Obviously you're going to be trotting out a rookie in Garrett Bradbury, who, I don't care how calm, efficient, smart, collected he was in college. This is this different ball game, staring down Grady Jarrett ahead of you.
And Pydell Flying playing a new position,
which after not playing his last,
it's a complete wild card. The interior is a complete wild card on offensive on the offensive line for the Vikings.
Well, it's not just a wild card. It's not just a wild card. It's literally it's probably the difference maker in this game. If Grady Jarrett is, I'll say this: if you can stop. Now, I won't even say stop. If you can slow down Grady Jarrett, if he doesn't have a dramatic impact on this game, think of something like a 1 to 2 sack performance with multiple tackles for loss. If you can avoid that happening, this is a defense that you can pick apart. So you look at what Kirk is going to need to do. He's definitely going to have to move around in the pocket. He's going to need to show some ability to reset his feet, find new positions to throw from, because that pressure is going to come from the interior. I think that, I think there is reason to believe in, a couple of these guys being able to stand up to this defensive line, simply because Grady Jarrett he's the guy. You can slow him down potentially with double teams and then make someone else beat you. Tack McKinley is extremely talented. Vic Beasley is extremely talented. But these are guys who, throughout their careers to date, have been basically roller coaster players. They have these breakout games where you think they're going to put it all together, and then they disappear for 6 weeks. That's basically what you've seen from Tack McKinley and Vic Beasley, who are their early round selections, edge rushers in the past. Honestly, it's been several years now for Vic Beasley. So. If you can slow down Grady Jarrett, you have a great opportunity to do some damage.
That's priority number one, and that might take CJ Ham out there just to block, in the backfield out of shotgun or something, or who knows. But getting him neutralized will be the priority number one. And for a young offensive line, playing new positions, starting your first NFL game. Guys on new teams, whatever it is, it's a huge challenge. And if they don't get him under wraps, it could get ugly, because that's when the Falcons kind of take advantage of turnovers, what have you, with those talented skill position players that they have on offense.
Absolutely. Moving on to the second level of their defense here. There's one guy here that stands out to me at linebacker, and that's Deion Jones. Guy that only played 6 games last year. Obviously was injured, missed a ton of time coming off of a Pro Bowl season. Was extremely effective as a rookie as well. Extremely talented player that can move sideline to sideline. He can cover your tight end. There are a lot, like his athleticism traits are, they're extremely impressive. And what's more impressive about him is his nose for the ball, his ability to seek out plays. He's a tackling machine. He's back on the field for the Falcons, and really that's a huge difference maker for them, because as a whole, the linebacker spot, it's not great. It definitely is not star-studded if you don't have Deion Jones out there. So it's certainly it will be a difference for them to have him out there this season.
Right, exactly. And I mean, outside of Deion Jones, I'm looking at both linebackers and the defensive backs. I'm not terribly impressed with the rest. So worry about him. And then I think you can take advantage of the secondary. Thielen and Diggs should have, well, I guess as long as Diggs is healthy. Sounds like he's got a hamstring thing flaring up, which isn't great. But as long as those guys are healthy and on the field, they're going to have a plus matchup. And it's going to take double teaming both of them to, I think, neutralize both Thielen and Diggs in this game. So it should be pretty easy for Kubiak / I guess the Kub-Fansky duo to whip up some play designs to get those two guys open and into their plus matchups.
Yeah, you look at the secondary that they're going to be trotting out there. Desmond Trufant's a guy that has kind of he was on fire early in his career. He looked like he was destined for success. An all-pro caliber player early in his career. Got hurt.
Showed lots of flashes before.
I don't even think it was just flashes. I think he straight up was just dominant for stretches of time before he got injured a couple of years back. And he is simply put, I don't think he's the same player that he used to be. He's not a shutdown corner.
Which maybe could say the same about Rhodes. I mean,
you probably can say the same thing about Rhodes until he proves us wrong.
Right.
But the one guy that I would say probably gets overlooked too much, and there's a reason why he was up there, and I believe he actually was tied for the lead in interceptions last year, was Damontae Casey. He kind of gets overlooked in that defense. A bit of a I don't want to call him a ball hawk after just one very impressive season, but he's definitely a guy. He's definitely a guy that you have to keep. Like, you have to know where he is. You don't need to necessarily game plan around him. We're talking about a guy that's basically a nickel corner, but he's a guy that can take advantage of mistakes, and we do know that Kirk Cousins has a tendency to make mistakes.
The guy that will, he'll read the quarterback's eyes and maybe leave his assignment to try and pick off a pass. One of those risky guys that if you can catch him, leaving his guy, catching red-handed, missing his assignment, whatever it is, you can make a big play yourself, but he is also trying to flip the script on you.
And that's basically what this Falcons defense needs to do. They need to force turnovers in order to be successful. Yeah. You're looking at
Kirk Cousins is probably the quarterback to do that too. So
he kind of is. I mean, it's sort of a bend but don't break defense. That's what it has been recently, just because they have not gotten the production from their early round picks that they probably thought they were going to get. Keanu Neal is also, an extremely talented player that, came out of college with a lot of promise. I think that he would be an example of a guy that has shown flashes, but not necessarily put it all together. Definitely potential for this to be There's definitely potential for this season to be it for Keanu Neal.
Okay.
But my point being here is that there's a lot of question marks in the secondary, and it's up to the Vikings to obviously, in terms of throwing the football, to make sure that those question marks are answered with a resounding, the same answer that the Saints gave the Atlanta last year, the same answer that Cam Newton gave them last year. Make sure that they're put, in their place, and at least save those questions for week 2. Let them answer to that call another week. You definitely have to take advantage of them here. as far as running the ball, this would be very interesting. We're looking at a zone a zone running scheme for the first time in what seems like forever, honestly. And it's going to be it's a different world. We talked about it in the past on the show. Basically,
it's a perfect fit for Dalvin Cook.
It's
it
a
really
perfect
is.
fit for
and
Cook.
It's also a perfect fit for an offensive line like this one, where guys are pretty good moving laterally. Sure. Not so great maybe in the power department, but Elflein's really good moving around. Bradbury's really good moving around. O'Neill's an athletic guy. It makes a lot of sense from that perspective. Now it's just about how efficiently can they – will they kind of stick to it and give it a chance? You kind of want to find that balance between like trying it too much but also giving it a chance, because last year DeFilippo really didn't give Dalvin much of a chance to get the ball. I think a lot of it's going to just be getting the ball to Dalvin, whether it's passing or running. As one of my bold predictions of Dalvin getting 100 receptions. That's a lot of receptions. It would take a lot of targets for Dalvin, and maybe that's what it takes because Kubiak likes to get the ball to his running backs. Point being, though, the zone running scheme should be a great fit, and it should improve things. And I know Zimmer still is a big, old-school run-the-ball, control-the-clock guy, so I would expect to see the Vikings entertain that notion quite a bit.
Just keep in mind that zone blocking scheme has the potential to cover up, flaws in your offensive line. In theory, you like to, if the offensive line is shifting to the right, for example, to the play side, you're going to have more than one hat on their linebackers getting to the second level quicker. Then it's all about Dalvin Cook. And from what we saw from him at Florida State and what we've seen in short bursts when he's been healthy in his NFL career, he's a guy that definitely can find the hole and explode through it with authority. We saw it the preseason. I know it's the preseason, but that's the type of play that you could see in this zone running scheme. So, this is a good defense to test it out on too. I think because you do have the playmaker in Grady Jarrett, where you're going to have a threat to neutralize, and it may take two guys to do so, potentially even three if you throw in a fullback. But if you can hold Jarrett off, I tend to trust Dalvin Cook one-on-one with these edge rushers, and with exception to Deion Jones in space, I like the chances of Dalvin Cook being able to bust one loose. This is Dalvin Cook is kind of staring down a bit of a make or break season. It may not feel that way just because he hasn't been on the field that much. And when he has been on the field, it's been good. But he needs to play, and he needs to play well this year. This is the third year of his career. There are expectations now with a zone running scheme that's designed for
Zeke
him.
Zeke just got done with the third year of his career. He's entering his fourth now. He got the big contract. It's getting to that point soon where if the Vikings are going to extend Dalvin, it's going to be about that time.
This is the year to show out. If he wants to get his money, it starts with Atlanta here, and I think I absolutely think he's got a great matchup to do it here. I would count on quite a few touches for Dalvin Cook this week, and whether that's catching the ball out of the backfield in space or finding a hole in the blocking scheme. It'll be fun to watch, and it's exciting to me. It's exciting for me because we'll finally get to see what this offense is really, what they're really made of. We saw very, very, very small pieces mixed in with a bunch of vanilla play calls during the preseason, and now we're finally going to get to see, a script to start off the game, an actual game plan, see what Kubiak and Stefanski have been working on. They've had all offseason to figure something out here. So it's definitely an exciting time, and I see a lot of potential for the Vikings to do some damage against this defense as long as you're able to neutralize those three main guys that we mentioned in Grady Jarrett, right. Deion Jones, and I'll throw Desmond Trufant in there as well. I would say their big three, honestly, it's probably Jarrett, Jones, and Casey until Trufant proves otherwise. Until he shows me that he's the same guy that he was a couple of years ago. Casey's probably the guy to keep an eye on. So Any final thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons?
Well, I motion to make a shift to the agenda here because I think we should just make our game pick right now, and then do our week 1 picks, and then go into the season preview.
All right, that sounds like a plan to me. Why don't you tell me what you think? I
feel like this is going to be a classic game where 20 points is kind of that key mark for the Vikings. Can you get to the 20, 21 points and then let your defense take care of the rest and maintain, keep the opposition under 20 points? I think they're going to do that. I think it's going to be a 24-17 win for Minnesota, and I think the defense will keep Matt Ryan and company relatively under wraps, and it might even be something like a garbage time touchdown at the Falcons score. But I think Minnesota at home is, it's something like 4 to 7 points better. They should be able to win this game, even though, Atlanta could be a wild card or better playoff team this year, but I think Minnesota can take care of them at home.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in the odds, the Vikings open as 3.5 point favorites. So my scoring prediction will reflect that. I'll say I've got the Vikings winning as well. The difference maker being that they're playing at home in week 1. I really think that's a huge.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge boost, especially to start the season. I'll go Vikings 31, Falcons 24. 7-point win for the Vikings. So I have them covering essentially.
Yeah. Same.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Good.
Yeah. So the Vikings, we both. It sounds like we both expect the Vikings to start off on a high note here. And basically, what it comes down to for me is a lot of exactly what Drew just said. I think what he mentioned about Kirk Cousins is important. The fact that this is like a no pressure game.
Last year, week 1, he played pretty darn well against San Francisco week 1.
Right.
I hate to say that about him because you're just kind of admitting that those flaws are true about him, like the big games, he kind of wilts under pressure, what have you. But
facts are facts.
Clearly the historical data shows if it's not a huge pressure game and it's against an opponent with a bad defense, he's probably going to perform pretty well, especially at home.
Absolutely. All right, so I just realized that we forgot to do the Thursday question. So let's break up the Falcons preview and our NFL season preview with a quick Thursday question here, and the question itself is also football centric.
Okay, well, good. I like that.
It is. So I assume that you've done your fantasy drafts already. Which pick in a 12-team league is the worst draft pick? If you see that you get this pick, which pick are you the most disappointed in?
So it depends on the year and the players available.
Of course, sure.
As for this year, we're talking standard scoring or maybe PPR, but
sure.
Not a keeper, dynasty league or anything, right?
Right.
I think number 4 is the worst one this year.
Why is that?
Because I think there's a clear top 3 in McCaffrey, Barkley, and Kamara. And then at 4, I think you're kind of guessing, and it depends sort of on your league. If you're a PPR, you might go receiver there, but if not, you're kind of guessing that running back between
you do have
Le'Veon Bell,
you do have
David Johnson.
Zeke back now, though.
True. I still think that's a good point.
Most people, I have to imagine that most people.
Yeah, most people probably didn't go Zeke. I still think those top 3 are still definitively top 3 though, just because they're I guess Zeke's that way too, but those 3 guys have so much volume in the passing game as well. I don't think Zeke's quite there in the passing game department. But for sure in a PPR league, which is what I've been playing, number 4 is the toughest part because those 3 guys are huge pass catchers as well in Kamara, Barkley, and McCaffrey. And so you're kind of guessing between receiver, between Zeke, whatever you do at 4.
Yeah, so I certainly agree with you that this is a year-by-year basis. This definitely changes. It definitely changes depending on how many running backs how many bell cow running backs are available in the first round. I know there are plenty of people out there that like to run the no running back, 0 running back theory, whatever. But for the most part, you generally want to get a running back in the first 2 rounds. So for me, that number 7 pick this year, not good at all. And
so what do you see even the top 6 after those? So you probably see Zeke at 4, and then is it
I see Barkley at 1. I see Kamara at 2, or I'm definitely okay with McCaffrey at 2, and then McCaffrey at number 3, and then now that we know that Zeke has accepted his contract and he's going to be on the field, I would take him at number 4, and that's kind of when the floodgates open, like you said. But I do like David Johnson a lot. I trust David Johnson. I feel comfortable with him as a top 5 pick, and then you've got kind of your pick at that number 6 spot with the remaining pieces, and I like the gambles that you can take there with guys like Le'Veon Bell. I mean, we're talking about a guy who used to be, definitively the best running back in the NFL, and it's not like he broke his leg or something like that. He's coming off of a rap album. Like, I don't hate Le'Veon Bell with that number 6 pick. Where it starts to get dicey is when you have to pick from the scraps that are left, or you can take a wide receiver, and that opens you up to a real problem. I've drafted now 5. I've done 5 drafts so far this year, and to me, if you're not getting a running back in that first, basically 24 picks, you're in a dangerous spot because there simply are there's too many running backs by committee. Too many running games that are run by committee this year.
Or there's like rookies that are going on, like David Montgomery in Chicago, that you don't quite know. Too. Yep, what kind of role they're going to have. So
it gets dangerous there. So if you theoretically, if you take DeAndre Hopkins at that number 7 spot, on your swing, you've got to wait whatever 10 picks or whatever it is to get your next spot, and then you're looking at guys like Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, who I personally like, obviously, but he is an injury risk, and you can't feel super comfortable with him as your number 1 running back. You might, be optimistic, but to me, that number 7 pick is that is the most lethal, and I apologize to anyone that was stuck with that in their fantasy leagues this year. All right, so let's get back to the post-preseason preview here. Go into the NFL season breakdown. So, like I said at the top of the show, Drew and I went through every division. We picked our winners of each spot, and did our Super Bowl picks. And we will obviously come back to this at the end of the year.
Should we go by conference, or how should we do this?
I think let's go by division. You can start in the NFC.
Okay. Start with the North. We'll just go North, South, East, West.
That sounds good to me. Let's do that.
Yeah. So North, I have the Green Bay Packers winning the NFC North, and I guess I do have the Vikings in a wild card playoff spot, and I have Chicago finishing probably 3rd there. In the South, I have the New Orleans Saints winning that division once again. In the East, I have Philadelphia. I think. I don't think Dallas's reign is going to last long, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs either. I think Philly's going to take a first-round bye, actually, as well. And in the West, I have the Rams maintaining their hold on the division, but not earning that first-round bye. I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back this year as well. And then wild card team, I have Minnesota and Atlanta in wild card spots. So then the 6th, in terms of seeding in the NFC, I have New Orleans number 1, Philadelphia number 2, the Rams 3, Packers 4, Falcons 5, Vikings 6.
So it sounds to me that we have a lot of the same teams, just in a little bit different order here. So for the North, I have Minnesota up top, winning the division. Objectively speaking, I think that this is the Vikings have
as
the
objective as you can be.
Yeah, honestly, I think the Vikings have the most complete roster of any team in the NFC North. I think they have, and honestly, I think they had the least amount of question marks as well. So you look at Chicago, who I do have as a wild card team. There's obviously a ton of questions about Mitch Trubisky. You've also got the fact that this defense, it's going to be very difficult to replicate what they did last year. So
Vic Fangio's gone.
Vic Fangio is gone. You got Chuck Pagano in there. It's just a different situation there. So and with Green Bay, I don't love Matt LaFleur like the media seems to, or I should say the national media seems to. Aaron Rodgers is great. Some of the additions that they made to their defense, and Zadarius Smith, and bringing in Adrian Amos and stuff like that. Like that's all well and good, but Those guys need time to gel. And I just don't trust Green Bay the same way that I trust Minnesota. I understand that the Vikings are also implementing a new offense as well, but the difference is that the shots being called from up top are going to be the same. The Vikings are sticking to the fact that they're going to be a run first team under Mike Zimmer, whereas this offense could look much different under Matt LaFleur. Aaron Rodgers, to me, as great as he is, I do think to a degree he's also a little bit overrated. I don't deny anyone.
I disagree.
I know you do. I don't have a problem with people saying that he's one of arguably the most talented quarterback to ever play the game. But his performance, he is overrated over the last couple of years. They simply have not won enough football games for him to be. If Kirk Cousins had the same record as Aaron Rodgers, we would destroy Kirk Cousins. It's not even like we wouldn't gush about Cousins. We would literally destroy him, and we would destroy him for throwing the ball away and being afraid of throwing the interception. We would destroy him for a lot of the things that Aaron Rodgers seems to get away with other people.
That's probably true. I'd say he's earned that.
As a person who was born into Vikings fandom, I am not going to allow the Green Bay Packers quarterback to get away with that non-criticism that he appears to get from, guys, Pete Prisco in specific that I'm thinking of here, but just in general. So I've got Minnesota winning the North. Like I said, I got Chicago in a wild card spot. Like Drew, I've also got Philadelphia in the East and the New Orleans Saints in the South. And the Rams in the West. The difference that I have mainly is simply the order here. I've got New Orleans up top as the number 1 seed as well, but I have the Rams getting a bye once again. I love Sean McVay. I expect him to continue to bring continuity. A word that we actually haven't said much since we started the show.
Because the Vikings don't have any of that anymore.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I expect that to be very I expect that offense to look very similar to what it did last year, and the defense, with exception to Aaron Donald, I can't imagine that they won't improve because they simply were not that good outside of Aaron Donald at times. So, I've got the Saints and the Rams getting byes. I've got the Vikings as the 3 seed. I definitely would be okay with flipping that with Philadelphia, simply because I think Philadelphia probably has a little bit easier schedule. But I have the Vikings at 3, Philadelphia at 4. I've got Chicago getting that top wild card spot, and Atlanta rounding out that top 6 in the NFC.
Okay. Yeah, and so we're pretty similar there. We just have, I think the only difference is Packers and Bears
pretty much
in the playoffs.
Right.
AFC, I think we might have more differences here. I have the Chargers with the number 1 spot. In home field advantage. I have the Patriots number 2 in a first round bye, winning the AFC East, Chargers winning the AFC West. The AFC South, I think, is going to be very interesting without Andrew Luck. I do have the Tennessee Titans winning that division and getting the number 3 seed in the AFC. Tennessee has lost, it seems like, twice a year to Andrew Luck, and that can almost be converted to wins now this year, which can, if you look back at their record the last few years, they're right around 500, and now if you get those 2 wins from the Colts, that kind of changes things and the perception of the team. Cleveland at number 4, winning the AFC North, and then the wild card spots I am giving to Kansas City from the AFC West at 5, and Houston in the AFC South at 6. I thought really long and hard about putting Baltimore in as a wild card spot instead of Houston, but I decided on Houston at the end there. So Chargers, Patriots, Titans, Browns, Chiefs, Texans is my top 6 in the AFC.
Excellent. So naturally, atop the AFC East, I've got the New England Patriots. I think that you're crazy if you say anyone else until proven otherwise. As much as the Jets and Buffalo have kind of quietly improved, I'm not going to bet against Tom Brady. Simply, you will not hear me do that on this show. Over to the AFC North, I've got Cleveland up top. I'm buying the hype with Cleveland, and I'm also, they are. If I had to pick an AFC team, they are definitely a team that I, would love to see do well as well. So, I've got them up top. I do have Pittsburgh also making the postseason. I chose them over Baltimore as well. Ultimately, I just like Roethlisberger more than I like Lamar Jackson. It's as simple as that for me. Over to the AFC South, I think that Houston has effectively hurt their future with the moves that they have made. But in the present, I do like their football team a lot. I love Deshaun Watson. I expect him to take a step forward this year. I really like Duke Johnson in kind of a featured role. I think that he's a guy.
I like to hear that because he's on every single one of my fantasy teams. So
he's very talented. He looks a lot like Lamar Miller, but he's younger and he's not as beat up. I like the potential that he shows in this offense. Then obviously you've got DeAndre Hopkins, who is arguably the number one receiver in the NFL. And that the defensive side of the football obviously is no slouch either there with, J.J. Watt, who's always a candidate to be Defensive Player of the Year. Plenty of talent even with Clowney leaving for Seattle. So I've got Houston up top on the South. In the West, which is where this kind of gets interesting, I have Kansas City winning the West again. Now, if Melvin Gordon was suiting up for the Chargers, I would be okay with flipping the Kansas City and L.A. So I have the Chargers as my second wild card team here. So really, to me, the difference is Melvin Gordon. That's the difference between 1 or 2 wins to me, and that's what's going to be enough to give Kansas City the top spot in the AFC. That roster is simply too loaded to not be very, very good once again.
Yeah,
Andy Reid is a hell of a coach. Patrick Mahomes looks like the next big.
I just don't like their defense. And I mean, they got away with it last year because nobody could stop the offense. But I feel like that's gonna come to a pass a little bit more this year, and that's why I have them as a wild card. But who do you got out of each conference, and then your Super Bowl winner?
So ultimately, the two number ones, and I don't like this, but my 2 number 1 seeds are going to be the representatives for the NFC and the AFC. So I've got New Orleans playing Kansas City in the Super Bowl. With New Orleans winning the Super Bowl.
I also have the New Orleans Saints winning the Super Bowl. That's phenomenal, right? I got them beating the Patriots.
I'm sure Vikings fans love to hear that, right?
I'm betting on the Patriots making it to the Super Bowl because they do like half the time with Tom Brady.
Safe bet.
So Saints over Patriots in the Super Bowl, and then I think you mentioned as one of your bold predictions or something in the last show that Drew Brees is going to retire.
It'd be a hell of a way to walk off.
That would be. I think that's how he's going to do it. So that's what we got.
Saints over Chiefs for me. Saints over Patriots for Drew. Ultimately, is what this season becomes for me. About the Vikings specifically. I think that they have the potential to win one playoff game, but
I don't think that.
I also think that they could get knocked out.
I think they'll be playing on the road if they make it, and Kirk on the road in the playoffs just doesn't sound like a win to me. So, but you never know.
You never know. All right,
take it to the dance and see if you can get it hot, right? That's what Eli Manning did twice.
And if there is a guy that's kind of boom or bust in terms of like getting hot and playing well.
Yeah,
it's never came at the right time for Kirk Cousins, but if he can time that hot streak up perfectly, we'll see what happens. But
yeah.
I have as far as a prediction is concerned, I've got the Vikings as likely a first round a team that's likely eliminated in the first round, with the potential to move forward, to the divisional round. So.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have to do this quick. On to our week 1 picks now. So as we did on About the Labor, I will say the game. We'll each make our picks, and we'll run through everything, starting with Thursday Night Football, Green Bay at Chicago.
I got the Packers. I'm backing up my season-long predictions for each team. Give me the Green Bay Packers.
I'm going with Chicago. I think they're the more complete team. Just reinforcing everything that I just said about Aaron Rodgers being a little bit overrated. I think this defense takes advantage of him on Thursday night. Tennessee at Cleveland is the next game on the docket.
Yeah, tough one for me because I have both teams winning their divisions. I'm going Tennessee on the road. I think they're the underdog by quite a bit. but I'm going to go with Tennessee.
I just said that I'm buying the hype with Cleveland. Starting week 1, Freddie Kitchens' official debut. I
like this. We're picking different teams each game. This is good.
I feel like this next game we'll probably pick the same one. Baltimore at Miami.
Yeah, Baltimore. Miami is like a JV team at this point.
That's the truth. Unfortunately, I'm going with Baltimore as well. We've already made our picks for Atlanta at Minnesota. Both of us are riding the Vikings' coattails for that one. Buffalo at the New York Jets. Quietly a very interesting game.
Yeah, I'm picking the home team just because I don't know enough about either team to kind of analyze it any other way. So give me the Jets.
In a AFC East matchup, a division matchup, I think it's you're fairly safe picking the home team. I'm doing the same thing. I like Sam Darnold more than Josh Allen. I like Le'Veon Bell more than the mess that Buffalo currently has in their backfield. And I simply think that New York has a little bit more on offense, whereas Buffalo is a candidate every single week, I think, to potentially not even score a touchdown. So I'm going with the Jets in week 1. Next one we got here is Washington at Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philly. You don't need to talk about this one.
Yeah, that's a pretty straightforward one as well. I'm also going with the Eagles. Over to the Los Angeles Rams at the Carolina Panthers, and kind of an interesting
one. Yeah, I think this will be a really close and fun game to watch. I think the Panthers can really make this a game, but I'm going to go with the Rams in a very close one.
I am going to go with Carolina here. It's to me the difference is playing at home, playing all the way across the country. I've always been a Cam Newton supporter. This is a matchup that he should like. Like I said, it's if you can stop Aaron Donald with this defense, they have been susceptible to the big play. Marcus Peters got burnt all year long last year. I expect McCaffrey and Cam Newton to take advantage of that, and I'm going with Carolina in the upset. Kansas City at Jacksonville, which is a lot closer on paper according to Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's a 3-point spread or 3.5-point spread, right. Super small. And although it is in Jacksonville, I'm going to Kansas City, and I mean, Jacksonville's a bit of a wild card because it wasn't that long ago where they were pretty good and had that strong defense.
Defense should still be pretty good, but do you trust Nick Foles is basically the question.
Which, given what he did to the Vikings, I probably should say yes, but for this game against Kansas City, I'm going to say no. Chiefs win.
I don't think that Nick Foles can keep up with Pat Mahomes. That's simple.
Also, remember John DeFilippo is Roberts coordinator, so
yeah. I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. Next one we got here, Indianapolis with the Jacoby Brissett-led Colts against the Los Angeles Chargers.
I would have said Colts if Andrew Luck was playing, but he is not. So give me the Chargers.
I love the Chargers. Like I said, if Melvin Gordon was in that backfield, I think they're the most dangerous team in the AFC. Austin Eckler is no slouch either. I like Keenan Allen to have a very nice season. I think this is Mike Williams' breakout here. Phillip Rivers can still get it done. Give me the Chargers in that one. Cincinnati at Seattle.
Another one we really don't have to talk about. Cincinnati is bad. Seattle is still okay. That's enough to win at home.
That's facts. Seattle for me as well. We got an NFC East division matchup here. Unfortunately, it's not as fun as it has been in the past. New York Giants at Dallas Cowboys.
Yep, Dallas. Can't wait to watch Joe Buck and Troy Aikman call about 9 Cowboys games this year.
I'm just waiting for the Giants fans to start chanting Daniel Jones' name like mid-second quarter, so I'll be keeping an eye out for that. I'm going with Dallas as well. Detroit at Arizona.
Arizona easily in this game.
Easily. I'm going with Detroit here. If you remember correctly, I did have the balls to say that Detroit would be the number 2 team in the NFC North in my bold predictions. They start off on a high note here, beat the rookie head coach. I think they will be more prepared this weekend. That moves us to San Francisco with a returning Jimmy Garoppolo against Jameis Winston, who is coming off an offseason where he didn't do anything illegal, which is nice.
Goodness. I guess I'm going to buy Bruce Arians here in Tampa Bay. A, because they're at home, but B, I think he can. I think if there's anything left of Jameis Winston, Bruce Arians can kind of bring it out.
I definitely like that perspective. I have a similar one. It goes with the head coach for the San Francisco 49ers. So
Fair.
Kyle,
How about that offensive matchup? Offensive innovators, Arians,
absolutely.
Shanahan.
Yeah, guys that have quite literally changed playbooks throughout their careers. So I'm taking San Francisco. I'm going to ride with Jimmy Garoppolo to figure it out after that kind of very, I think the best word is pitiful, preseason performance that we saw from him in Week 3. That moves us to Pittsburgh at New England, which should actually sound like, on paper, it sounds like a pretty good football game.
Yeah, I'm not high on the Steelers this year, and it just seems like now Antonio Brown's gone, so maybe that does relieve some of that locker room stuff.
Sure.
But give me New England at home, and I think the Steelers are still somewhat dysfunctional to be contending for playoffs this year.
Yeah, I'll take New England as well. Bill Belichick is widely regarded for being able to take your best player out of the game. This is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster's first shot at being a number one receiver. I expect Belichick to take him out of the game and make James Washington and Dante Moncrief beat him, which I don't think is going to happen. So give me New England as well. Last couple ones here on to Monday night. Really, it should be a really fun one here. Houston at New Orleans. This could be a game that is filled with defense and turnovers, or we could see they destroy the scoreboard.
Give me New Orleans because it's at the Superdome in New Orleans. It's at the Mercedes-Benz Dome or whatever it's called now, but it's in New Orleans with that crowd. But I do think Houston could put up like 20 to 30, probably about 30 points in that game. I just think Breeze will put up more.
Yeah, I just picked the Saints to win the Super Bowl. And
True.
I just
That's probably a good reason for me to pick the Saints in that game too.
Absolutely. I just saw a stat floating around too that winning Week 1 tends to mean teams that win Week 1 tend to be the ones that end up making the postseason.
Something like 50% of teams that win Week 1 make the postseason.
I think it's actually higher than that. So give me New Orleans in this one. I still think Houston's going to make the postseason, but this is a team that started 0-3 last year and was able to recover. So I'll take New Orleans, and that brings us to an absolute barn burner in the final matchup late Monday night. We've got Denver at Oakland.
I got Hard Knocks fever. I'm picking Oakland. That's pretty much it. The only reason is because I watched Hard Knocks and now I like John Gruden.
I'm going to take Denver because the Raiders are a mess.
This is true, but I still like John Gruden, so.
Fair enough. All right, so that rounds out the picks for the week here. That brings us to our new segment, Lock of the Week. We're going to be picking. We're going to be doing a couple gambling picks here. Neither of us are experts in gambling. This is simply something fun to do, and we'll see how many of these we can string together here. Who is your lock of the week?
So, a little about me and gambling. I don't like spreads. I like to bet money lines only, and I like to make money off of my money line bets. So, Arizona, at what are they, plus 120? I've seen plus 130. Depending on the site that you are looking at, give me Arizona as a lock over Detroit. I think Arizona is much improved this year. I'm buying into Kyler Murray as a rookie quarterback, and Detroit is still the absolute lowest class of the NFC North, and they will be for the foreseeable future. So give me Arizona at home and cash those plus 120, 130 slips, whatever you got.
That's interesting. I mean, I just took Detroit to win, so that's it takes some cojones to make them your lock. I'll go with a little bit safer pick. I'll take the spread. The Los Angeles Chargers over the Indianapolis Colts. Chargers are 6.5 point favorites. I've got them covering that easily.
I can agree with that.
I believe that Jacoby Brissett is very talented. I don't believe that he's prepared for the Chargers Week 1, though. I think that Phillip Rivers simply can overwhelm him. He's been placed into a very, very difficult position. The Chargers have become a little bit more consistent in recent years under Anthony Lynn. I like them to go in there and take care of business at home, easily covering that 6.5 point spread. So Chargers are my lock. Arizona Cardinals are Drew's lock. Bet accordingly. So I mean, I'll be putting my money on the Chargers legally, of course, since betting is not legal in Minnesota.
Well, it is in Iowa, so you're going to drive down to Iowa and make the bet.
I'm going to fly to Las Vegas, actually.
Gotcha.
To place my bet. That brings us to the final part of our show here. Final thoughts. Anything that hasn't been said already in the post-preseason, preseason preview that you'd like to bring?
Post-preseason, preseason preview. Okay. I guess I mentioned. No, I didn't say this. I made another bold prediction. I was on the radio with Seth Tupal, who has a show with the Redwood Falls radio station, and I predicted basically a big season for Aaron Jones in Green Bay. I said 1,900 scrimmage yards for him. I think that's a realistic number. It's a combination of rushing and receiving for Aaron Jones this year if he stays healthy. Big season for him in store. Big season for the Packers. Bounce back year. They're going to finish with 10 or 11 wins, win the division.
Yeah, I just want to highlight this Ezekiel Elliott saga that we have here that appears to be coming to a close with a big win for Zeke himself. If you're in Melvin Gordon's situation, you see that whole thing go down. I'm not playing a snap for the Chargers after the contract that Zeke just got.
Yeah. Well, and did you see the trade market for Melvin? Because there's not really one. The Eagles wanted to offer Jordan Howard in a fifth for Gordon, and then make the Chargers still pay for Gordon's salary this year, or something stupid like that, where the
Chargers are in a very difficult position. It's a weird thing because neither Gordon nor the Chargers have any power in this situation. Obviously, Gordon, from a legal perspective, given that I have a legal background now, is breaching his contract. So he's not gonna make any money, which I do think is interesting because when Le'Veon Bell did this, he was sitting on a pot of gold already. With Melvin Gordon, this is a guy that's been playing on rookie money, first round pick rookie money. Let it be known, but when the fact that he is gambling with his career here,
right. The Chargers are letting Melvin seek a trade, and the Steelers didn't do that with Bell. That's kind of the big difference in these two scenarios, but I still think the end result might be the same, is that Gordon just doesn't play this year.
I think the real question here, and I don't think this will be answered anytime soon. This might be something we revisit during the offseason, but is this the return of the running back contract? Are we seeing it before our eyes? Obviously,
it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I think it's hilarious that Dallas is paying a running back $100 million.
For 6 years, too. Obviously, Bell probably didn't get the money that he was expecting to get on the open market, but he definitely still got a nice lump sum from the Jets, whether Adam Gase likes it or not. Now Zeke's getting this big contract. I mean, at some point that Gordon's going to get paid. It's just a matter of who is going to pay him. But that's my big question here for the NFL season, and if this is something that will be resolved, in the near future here. I just saw that Gio Bernard is also being extended, which is interesting given that Joe Mixon is the guy.
Different scale a little bit. But
different scale, but we're seeing second contracts coming for running backs right now. So my question to you, the listener, are running back contracts back? Is this something that we're going to get an answer to?
No.
Drew says no. Zeke says yes. So that rounds out the show for today. I hope you enjoyed the preseason preview.
There you go.
And as always, make sure to like and subscribe on iTunes. If you want to leave a review, please do. Maybe give us a couple more episodes to really get into a full swing of things before you do that. But if you want to go ahead and put 5 stars down now, go for it. As always, you can find us on YouTube as well if you prefer to watch us talk to each other. You can do that. That page is at Unbelievable Podcast on YouTube. We always post a link on Twitter as well on that page at unbelievable_MN. And I think that's all I've got. So if you have any thoughts on the Thursday question, be sure to fire those off to us on Twitter. If you have any thoughts about our picks, if you want to belittle the decision, the choices that we made in our predictions, feel free to throw those out at us. We'd love to talk to you about that. So as always, you can find us on Twitter, and we'll definitely respond to all of that. So thanks for listening, and hopefully the next time we speak to you, we'll be looking at a 1-0 Minnesota Vikings team.